Well, I told you I've been playing a lot of Metroidvanias lately, and now for the most Metroidy of such things, Axiom Verge. Did not play this one on stream, played this one on my own time. It is, I mean, it's Metroid. I mean, it just kind of is. Like, and I don't mean that in necessarily a rip-off way, but like its graphical style is very 8-bit Metroid. Yeah, I'm a little bit prettier than that, but it's obviously trying to more evoke 8-bit than 16-bit. But like almost everything you can do is an equivalent to stuff that you can do in Metroid. Not necessarily the exact same way, but still accomplishing the same thing. So like here's an example. In Metroid, very famously, you can get into tight spaces once you get the ability of what's called Morph Ball, which basically shrinks your figure down to a little ball, and you can roll into tight spaces, and later you'll gain the ability to jump while in that form, etc., to get into small places. In Axiom Verge, you get a drone. So while your character doesn't shrink down, you instead sort of throw this thing that is small and can get into smaller spaces, and you then control it through passages. And so that's how you get it. So again, slightly different mechanism, but the same effective thing. And this thing is absolutely littered with that kind of stuff. It, like I said, it's Metroid. Like plot-wise, is a little bit different. It deals with a guy who was like involved in some kind of science thing, and he gets shot to this sort of barrier area between two worlds, and there's obviously all this stuff that's dangerous, stuff that could kill him. There's these beings who seem to have lost their power and their ability to do things. They're asking for his help, and it's that kind of thing narratively. But again, just everything about this is striving to evoke Metroid, from the sound to the look to the feel, and it does that very well. Like if you like retro Metroid, if you liked, and like even as I said, though the graphical style is more in line with the 8-bit in the NES era, but if you like Super Metroid, if you liked Metroid Fusion, Metroid Zero, can't say whether or not I'd count Metroid Dread. I never did get around to that one, but this is incredibly Metroid. Almost everything about it, but it evokes that incredibly well. And so I can't really knock it for that. It does make it honestly have a little bit less lasting impact than it might have, with a more original aesthetic, art style, and overall feel to the thing. Because while I did enjoy my time with this, and was very happy to fill out the map, I didn't get it to 100%, but like I kept going even after having beaten the final boss to try and find some extra stuff. And it fills out the map the way you want a Metroidvania to fill out the map. You get a new ability, you try and go, oh, okay, where was it back in that previous area where I saw something that I could now get around with this ability? You go back, you open up a new area of the map, and you realize what you thought might have been just like a little area with a little health pack or like a little boost for this or that. You realize it's a whole other section, like, oh, well, now I gotta check this out. It's got all that. It's got everything you want. But because it does feel like such an homage to Metroid, if you are familiar with Metroid, this isn't really a problem if you aren't familiar with those specific games, that are more just familiar with the Metroidvania genre of 2D exploration games, but not necessarily Metroid specifically itself, then this probably won't be an issue for me. But for me, this is not going to leave the biggest lasting impression, because it spent a lot of its time reminding me of a game with a clearer identity of its own. So I don't think that's a detriment to the moment-to-moment gameplay. I do think it's going to be a little bit of a detriment to me sort of holding the memory of this game in my head, because even now, like, I'm starting to wonder, was that exactly what went down in this game, or is my brain, like, has it muscled out what Axiom Verge did in favor of stuff that was actually from a Metroid game? I actually find myself wondering that, because I wrapped up with it a couple of weeks ago, and I've just been too busy to sit down and talk about it. But that is one of those things where it's like, it's both a minor sort of knock on it, but also a compliment, because when you're trying to evoke something else and you do it so well that I'm thinking about your stuff and this other thing in the same breath, then clearly you accomplish that at an incredibly high level. But at the same time, I'm just inclined to think that having a little bit more clear of its own identity. So, like, for example, another game that I played recently that I am going to do a separate review on was a game called Lost Ruins. And that is a slightly Souls-like-esque Metroidvania. And it actually played in some ways quite similar to another game that I had played. And I'll bring all this up when I do a Lost Ruins review. But like, just the aesthetic of Lost Ruins did a lot to muscle me through some gameplay that sometimes got frustrating because I hadn't seen that kind of gameplay with that aesthetic, with those kinds of characters, with that, certain visual flair that Lost Ruins has. And again, I will do a separate video talking about what that was because it still amuses me. But this, it doesn't have its own unique flavor. It's got like a handful of very distinct images that I'm pretty sure will stick in my head, but its overall feel just is not really its own thing. And while that hits the nostalgia quite well, there's nothing wrong with evoking nostalgia. I enjoy it. But at the same time, I guess I'm just at a point where, like, it'd be nice if you could evoke my nostalgia, but also give me something that I maybe haven't seen before, maybe couldn't get somewhere else, and don't feel like there's a version of this that I've seen elsewhere. I suppose maybe with its story does have some interesting twist, but it's told in the way that Metroidvania-style stories often are, which is just a lot of people talking about what has already happened. And it makes it less active as a narrative. And it's not really a narrative style that lends itself particularly well to twists. There is a twist in this, and it's not even necessary. It's not a bad one. But again, it's not a narrative format that really a twist benefits from in any way. I mean, there's a reason that Metroid stories historically have been incredibly bare bones, because you're not really coming into an active situation. You are moving around this either overgrown or wild or ruined area and trying to figure out what the heck is even here and what are we doing. The narrative is through the exploration and what you learn about the area, not necessarily a more traditional, and then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Whereas this is trying to bring some of that in, and again, it's just not a format that quite lends itself to it. I feel like I've been nitpicking this game way more than it deserves, because I did like it. I enjoyed it. I beat it. I kept playing it for a little while after I beat it. So if you like Metroidvanias, give it a shot if you haven't already. It is pixel art. It is, as I said, it's 8-bit Metroid looking. That's what it is. I enjoyed it. Have you played it? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and allows me to do this as my living. Even if you can't support me that way, like, share, subscribe, all help me out. Don't sweat it too much, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. Well, it's Patreon supporter shout-out time, folks. So thank you to Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfulla, Tarak, The Thing That Goes Doink in the Anime, Oliver B., Angus Bjarnason, Linda Walters, Emu Delkey, Leotha Boyd, Toy Lowly, Becky Spark, Vernabulax the Poodle, Zach, Tracy Scrabbit, General Contact Unit Problem Child, Angry Casperl, Tim Price, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, Shayla Gourlay, and Brendan LaRose. Thanks so much for your help. You can get your name read out too. Check out the rewards in the Patreon. Is that what they should do? Should they check the Patreon?